on the core team are usually go back and look at the recordings, but it's good to have them. We'll have at least partial one, and we'll make a. This was a dry run. We'll make a better movie next time, team.
No worries. It's the draft anyway, so we'll have a better version next time.
Okay.
So I chatted with our IT staff, and like I said, this might be a little blurry because I just took a screenshot of what he was showing me, because I've lived this a couple of times, but I was like, I should chat with him and see if they have this process. I did ask for a process map. They did not have a process map, but this is kind of a document that describes for IT how they get from idea capture to closeout. And let's see. Oh yeah, recording has started. Okay. So there are some things that I think are missing from this, that when I look at what Scott is showing, I'm like, I want that and I want this other thing. But anyway, but just kind of this is our as is. And the reason I asked Ting about the like what kind of project or what defines the level of project, I think we have a hard time with that too. And we end up with a lot of stuff that's like littler and of a different scale. And anyway, so that's not solved, but our ideas or requests come in through a ticketing system, which is used for other kinds of IT requests too. So, you know, so there's things that go to the help desk, or there's things that go, you know, to different parts of IT depending what their need is. But there's one specific for, I need an IT project. And then kind of a little bit like the way you have, I think there's SLT stands for Senior Leadership Team. So that's like to give visibility to that senior leader that this request has been made. I guess there had been some problems with visibility on that previously, and they'd like go work through this whole process and realize the senior leader wasn't on board. So then next step, review and assess. There's an intake meeting. This is an area where I think there's a lot of room for improvement, lots of room for improvement. But that's where they're trying to understand the project goals and final deliverable and validate their request. I feel like it's hard for me to walk through this without talking about what's wrong with it. But anywho, that's that step there. Then there's a project charter developed. The TWG stands for Technology Working Group. So I think, Ting, you kind of mentioned potentially kind of a group. There is that. A charter's developed, which kind of, and I could share a template of what that looks like. It's real high level. And then again, a senior leadership team member approves it. Then it goes to this technology working group, it's presented, and then there's a decision made, or they call it disposition, about whether it's going to move forward. Pretty much everything moves forward. So then next up, there's decision made about resources. And then once IT resources are assigned, and then it kind of starts with the, you know, setting up the project and the system development lifecycle. How often they are, I think they're once a month, but it seems like they end up getting canceled. So I think it's intended to be once a month, but maybe happens more like once a quarter, but I could check on that. And then there are, you know, under the system development lifecycle, there's lots more there underneath all of that, but there's also like project, you know, in terms of status reporting meetings, there's, you know, there is a change control board and all that stuff. And then, you know, once you get through all of that and you've executed your project, then there's lessons learned and sponsor sign off. So that's super high level of the process. This is we have the chief governance officer in IT. She's been there about 3 years, and this is a process that she developed because we Yeah, lesson learned is really good. I participated in a couple of those, and it's nice to be able to get it all out. And hopefully we're learning some good lessons along the way and applying them to future projects. But in talking to folks who worked in IT before this was set up, people felt that they were pulled in lots of different directions, and get started on something and then get pulled to something else, and it just was kind of not sustainable. So this has been positive in lots of ways. A couple of things about it that for where there's room for improvement is it is a lot of what feels like bureaucracy to staff to go through all these hoops, when in the past they were able to just kind of go directly to people in IT for help. So that's I think some of this could be a little bit less less bureaucratic potentially. But the bigger thing is under the review and assess. That's an area where I hope to help influence that to be better. And one of those ways is to have a digital strategy that it would at least lay out, like right now, kind of similar to you, Ting, like you've got priorities coming from your senior leaders, and I think Scott was saying this, kind of like having the bigger kind of vision of where we're going. I'm sorry, I didn't put my camera on. Would be really useful. So that's something we're working on, but we're just in the baby stages of that, like building an inventory. So we're really in the very beginning of that. Also, part of that would be to have, I think Scott called it a business case. I think we're calling it kind of a business scorecard. We do have, it's not mentioned here, but there is a IT scorecard, which is meant to like help vet what is the appropriate solution or tool, and especially looking at what tools we already have. That does exist. It's not listed here, but that is one thing that they are considering under that assessment. But to have like a complementary business scorecard, and I think, Ting, you had that under criteria. So we kind of like don't have that. It's just things are coming in and then they just move through the process versus like really vetting them. And like I said, there's a little bit of that on the IT side, trying to help if it isn't very far along yet, the project, to help them maybe pick the right tool. That's there a little bit. So having a strategy that helps, and then also I think having larger programs will help as well. There's a little bit of that instead of having 16 different project requests for workflow automation, we now have one program that's for workflow automation, and everything that comes in about workflow automation now fits under a program and it is handled more like a task under a larger program. So hopefully we will also have more of that. So that's like a quick overview. And I saw there were some questions that I tried to answer as I was going, but then I think there were some more that I didn't. Okay. Yes, I can post the IT scorecard. And then how does your project relate to budget? It doesn't relate very well at all to budget. I think that people are still, it doesn't relate well. Because things are just like being approved and very few things are not approved. So they basically just get added to this long pipeline list. And I did put that in the file, and you'll see this like long list of projects, a lot of which haven't been worked on yet. And so it's like I said, this created some structure and order, but it's still a lot of room for improvement. And then in terms of, there's really not a lot of forecasting yet, although the project management office wants to be able to do that. Now that they have collected some data about how long it's taking them to do things, certain kinds of projects, they are going to try to do more forecasting, which could theoretically help them with budgeting. But we definitely don't have a good, it's room for improvement between, it's kind of more departments are submitting their budgets and maybe they put something for technology in there. But it's, room for improvement. So.
That's great.
Okay.
Comments or questions?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm sorry I was late. I just got here. So hello. And I came in on the end of the conversation, but I do have a comment on the budgeting part.
Yes.
So up until this year, all of our software application budgets were diffuse in the overall, right? So wastewater treatment, whatever tool they had, it was in their budget.
Okay.
Customer service, whatever it was in their budget.
Wow.
So on and so forth. And then there were a number of tools that were in IT's budget as well, right?
Okay, yeah.
So what we did was we consolidated all of the tools for all of the software, really maintenance costs, because that's where all the software companies make their money, is in the maintenance and the upgrades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we consolidated that all into our IT budget.
Okay.
And what the impact of that was total disbelief from our management on how much money we were spending on these tools. They'd
never seen it all together.
They had never seen it all together in one place. And then to take that further, the reason we did it is our data systems plan is posted on the SharePoint site, if you look at one of our outcomes that we're after, it's to consolidate and lessen the number of tools that we have where possible. So that was so it sort of fits into that strategic framework.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives, but I guess where I go with it is, it's a really great way to get people to think about this in a more strategic manner. It's because, as you said, it's sticker shock, right? It's like, what? We spend what for what? And it really changed the way we look at these tools. And I mean, I'd been saying it for a couple of years. We spend a lot of money on technology. You guys realize how much money we spend on technology, and then it just blew everyone away. They could not believe it this year. So,
when they actually saw it all in one budget. Oh,
absolutely. And I would also argue, in a couple of other tools that we have in there, the same exact thing happened when we did the systems mapping. And then when we did a series, we just finished a series of process maps where, hey, here are all these scripts that we run so that we can charge revenue to X or Y or Z. And when you start putting those things together, the complexity of what's involved changes the way everybody understands, what's necessary. And it gives our strategic approach a lot more credence, because nobody wants to untangle some of these webs that we have, right? And so I think consolidating everything in one place, or whether it be money or processes or software applications or servers or whatever, really exposes to people in a way that's not possible when you're just talking about it. The level they depend on data to do their job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
anyway.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, one of the things when I was talking to the project management office this morning, they said, like, sometimes this review and assessment step is, they're like chasing after something at that point, that the department, because they have their own money for things, they've already like gotten it into procurement.
100%. What happens is they turn to you and say, manage it. Or they
Exactly.
turn to the IT group and say, manage it. And they weren't involved in the specs. They weren't involved.
Right.
It's any number of things that go with it.
Right.
And I go back to the thing you were saying, and this was the other point I was going to make, and I forgot, but you just sparked it, is, a process like the one that you're showing, which may seem like it takes a lot of time, when you're making an investment that has an enterprise-wide impact, like a lot of data systems are anymore, then it probably should take time, right? And,
right.
it's just another I don't know. There's a happy balance there. You don't want to take too long, but you also want to take enough, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that's like where I'm in this like idea of having more like programs, I think is maybe like the right potentially has a potential to be like the right level, because it's like you get agreement that this is something that, you know, workflow automation or whatever, that you want to do more of this. And then so you get the buy-in, and then like as smaller things come in, you're able to like manage them without quite as much bureaucracy. But anyway,
Yes.
so still work in progress.
Well, that's great. This looks very interesting, Yvonne. If you don't mind, let me just share. There's a comment.
Hey, Cello, I have a quick question for Yvonne, for the flow process, Yvonne. So
Yeah.
you have a status meeting there bi-weekly. Is that with the whole group or based on the ongoing project and status? How does that work?
That's project managers reporting to the CIO and the project management office on the status of their project. And they don't cover every project. But yeah, so like a project that I'm more closer to is an enterprise data mart. And so the project manager for that goes to that and reports on. And I think I might have put an example of one of those status meetings in my files so that you can see, you know, they're reporting on status and risk and, you know, progress on milestones and that kind of thing.
Okay, so it sounds like there's the IT project managers and then the business users who are involved in that process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's usually mostly IT project managers, but there are some examples of, like, for example, the data project. My project manager is not in IT, but he still reports at that meeting.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a question, Yvonne. Do you have an equivalent to, like, at my day job, when we have the change management board, is whether it's a capital project or an operating project, somebody wants to change something, whether it's operating or capital, bringing in new things, older things, it has an impact on other things. So, for example, this weekly meeting that I'm talking about is, regardless of what it is, you want to, you know, update your billing system, or your, you know, we get together, and then there's a group that includes the database people, the network people, the you know, people who support this system. Is there a forum to vet these things? And there are different levels of change. You know, change that will impact just this piece of software, change that will impact everybody, because this, you know, usually cybersecurity is like that. They impact everybody. Do you have an equivalent of that?
So yeah, I know it's like, and then change has like different definitions. There is, I mean, IT would say, yes, we have a change control board or something like that. Yeah. And that is like, they review that you've got all your documentation and you've done your testing, and that, you know, by implementing and putting something into production, you're not going to break 5 things. So that's their definition of change management in IT. What we don't have, but I think what you're talking about, but I think maybe Scott has, is an evaluation of like what impact this would have to the business in terms of changing processes, what new training might be necessary, like do you need more or different staff? Like that evaluation doesn't happen today. And I have seen, unfortunately, some enormous, my life there in the last 3 years has been like part of a huge project that for which that planning hadn't happened. And so like almost everything I do has been related to like catch up, because a lot of that stuff wasn't planned for. So we do not do that. I really hope to be able to do that through like a business scorecard, or business case or something. So yeah, so part of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, Scott?
I think Ting had her hand up first there, Cello.
Oh, okay, sorry. think you're muted.
Sorry, that's my previous question there. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, listening to what you were kind of describing there, Yvonne, that business case does, like, because change control in the pure IT world is, I want to make, you know, I want to open up this port and close that port so that I can move, you know, from this DMZ back behind the firewall and then back out, you know, it's a very almost technically, you know, right? Whereas what I think you're speaking to, Cello, is more of a business type change control, right? And so our business case is really a reaction by me of saying, hey, organization, the pieces of software that you're, you know, asking us to invest in, here are all the things that it's supposed to do, and here are all the things that will occur, good or bad, should that thing be done, right? And in our case, the business case is ultimately decided. I think Scott had a question. It's ultimately decided by the asset management group. So it'd be me and the IT manager and whoever the sponsor is on IT. And the reason is because at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones that are asked to manage this tool. So if we're going to be the ones asked to manage this tool, it has to fit into the context or the strategic sort of portfolio that we can actually manage. So that's sort of how we do it with those type of investments.
I just flashed the DC Water's analysis when they did, this is from their case study, and they were looking at this, conduct business case evaluation. But you can see very similar logic in components: compile needs from users, evaluate, assess risk, conduct business case evaluation, prioritize fiscal limits. It probably is not, you know, so, and then if you dig into this one, it's develop opportunity and need statements, identify stakeholders, develop, you know, I think that if we look at this, and then when you blow up the, like this one, this box right here, below, it looks like this. And then if you, you know, look at the alternatives process, wherever the heck it is, I can't, you get my point and what the decisions are. It's really helpful, in my experience, to like Scott was saying, if you come to people with a drawing or some map, it's a lot easier to talk about it, because it's difficult to make all these connections in their heads. It's just really, you know, difficult. So it would be very nice if we could have, you know, this kind of hierarchical structure, and then people could take on different, like this is a small part of the CIP planning part, this conduct business case evaluation. So DC Water focused on that. So we could look at that, at these different things. It would be really, I think, helpful for folks, especially if we start attaching all these are artifacts, you know, a draft opportunity and need statement, draft needs. So you have an example of that, then, you know, it starts really speaking to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And the only thing I'd say about the IT that's a little, or our data systems plans, is there is no, do you do a business case or not? And the reason is because of what I mentioned. The nature of the business case is different than a capital, and every piece of technology that we're investing in has an enterprise impact. It just does, because we have to manage it, right? So you have to do it. It's also a great way for when everybody comes back from a conference and has 95 pieces of marketing material from different software vendors that they want. I'm like, cool, fill out a business case. And shockingly, I don't get a lot of business cases.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I also want to have a question. The problem that I see again at my day job was that, let's say, I'll just mention a CMMS, right? Everybody's excited to get it in, but then it takes different types of skills to maintain that CMMS. It takes the skills, IT skills, in terms of configuring the taxonomy, the inventory, the name tags and everything. Make sure that a pump has the same name in the drawing, in the hydraulic model, in the CMMS and so forth. and then it takes the day-to-day working with the system. So what happens is that when they look at the price of the system, they typically look at purchasing the price, paying for the license, and configuring it and put it, but that's when the work starts, really. And so what we see is that IT has some folks, actually, they eventually report to me, is who provide the support for the software, for the lab, for LIMS and CMMS and all that. But there's an equivalent people, there are equivalent people in operations who are supposed to do their part. Well, guess what? If somebody retires, they're so keen to replace it with somebody who will do more operational work and transfer. So if you don't have a clear RACI matrix, you end up doing, IT has to be on the hook to do a lot more than they bargained for. And then if it's not represented in some way, to say we had 20 people supporting 10 applications, now we have 21 people supporting 50 applications, and they also have to do the client's work. I think that to include that kind of aspect in the planning for the lifetime would really determine be a good thing to do.
So like a good example, good not good example, the project that's consumed my life in my all of my 3 years at WSSC has been post implementation of a new billing system, billing, meter, and fieldwork system. And that is now costing us annually $6 million, in addition to like the license fees, which actually are not that much. But we have a $6 million contract annual for an IT service provider to help us to every quarter make adjustments to processes within the system, because it was, maybe we didn't configure it well on the front end or whatever. But like, I don't know when that $6 million annual cost is going to end, because like we very much need them. And those are not people within IT, because we didn't have people within IT who had that expertise with this particular software. And so like that one for me is this like example, like, hey guys, you want to, in addition to like there's other OD, organizational development expenses, and we had to have some temps come on. There's been quite a lot of additional expense and coming out of, and now that are seemingly like ongoing annual expenses. And in general, we probably want to try to minimize that. And so planning that we do on the front end, not that it's going to take that away, but like,
it'd be nice to plan ahead. It would be nice to plan ahead and say, if we go this way, this is what we're going to need, 3 years from now, Right. So Scott is showing us.
Yeah, I was just going to share this with everybody in the group. I can post this as well. So both of your points are incredibly valid, and this is our attempt to sort of triangulate with our staff a lot of the issues that you're speaking to. And this is our asset management section. So this is the group that I lead. But one of the things that we did when we started putting together the org was, okay, what are the elements that we encounter? It was kind of a business-driven approach to the org chart. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But so we always have a sort of a core IT set of problems, right? So things like network management, licensure, cloud management, CIS, hardware, that type of stuff, right? And then very, very right, imagine that this is sort of an imaginary line, but we have a bunch of operational applications and decision support tools. So our CMMS, our WinCan, and this speaks to what you were talking to, Cello, which is this group sort of maintains the backbone of the tools, and this group works with all of the stakeholders to sort of handle the day-to-day configuration. So they have some level of IT skill set, they have some level of business analyst type skill set, right? And we use them to sort of operate in between this group, the IT group, and the business team. And then we have a pretty large GIS section. But the reason that GIS is in here is because GIS essentially everything we do is GIS based in some way, form, or fashion, right? It's getting more and more that way. So, and then we have a business analytics group. So if you think about it, it's like the core backbone. Here's some folks who are the non-GIS business application systems, GIS, which is our largest business application system. And then these are the folks at the end of the day who take all that data and shape it into something that we can actually use via whatever tools we have, right? Yeah. I'm not saying this is the way to do it, but it's our attempt to sort of triangulate what you were saying there, Cello, is how do we maximize our IT group infrastructure to get to those all of the elements that leads to business insight or business intelligence or data, analytics at the end of the day. And that's really what all of our data systems we use them for, is for that analytic piece. We have production systems, but we use all the data for some level of analytics. And that's sort of why we set it up this way. So I can share this, no problem, but I thought I would sort of where the conversation was going. It seems to me that that's sort of what we're talking about here. And I think because if you try to solve these problems with only IT, guess what type of solutions you're going to get? Only IT solutions, at least in my opinion. So there's like a mix of skill sets you got to have there. And I don't know if Ting, if you've got that going where you are, but also IT guys or IT people are really great at being like, don't have time, not going to do it. That type of thing. So.
Yeah. The next level is real soon now.
Yeah.
It's on the roadmap. It's on the roadmap.
Ting does have her hand up.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, Scott, your structure. I was asking you about that earlier. So we are trying to do the same. So we have a core IT group, which is focused on infrastructure, network, and the phone and all that data center systems. And then we have a small group of developers doing some of the customer integration. So we have like 3 or 4 people within the digital solutions do that. All our kind of operation analysts who's supporting like a LIMS or HawkWIMS, those are with the department. So we work with them, but we don't have a kind of within the one group.
Yep.
And then the same as the GIS. So we have a GIS system administrator and doing the patching and upgrade. So that's within digital solutions. But then we have a GIS specialist across the district, and they are reporting to individual departments. I'm just going to we used to have a manager who's going to be focused on the BI. So that's what Yvonne and Scott, you guys are talking about more on the program level. And then we don't have a formal data analytics team or something. So it's across the district there, people using Power BI or Excel. So I'd like to also add a data management specialist focusing on kind of data quality and data governance there, and also some of the people to support the BI. So we're just starting growing that area.
Yeah, that is so that BI group, right? The analytics group is brand new. I've only had that since I've had it 6 months. That was the last piece that I added to because I had to so all of what you saw, started out, the asset management team was me. That's it. Then it was, and I just cobbled together all these other ones. And I finally convinced the director that the last piece of the puzzle was that data, what I'd call basically data management, right? Data analytics, business intelligence, data governance, all of those elements that really are caused by all the issues in the other groups, right? Everybody, in our legacy systems or any number of things. So that's how we got to what we got to. And I think that I feel now that we have the chance to actually be an asset management driven organization because we have all of those things sort of in place. Does that make sense? I did not trust that we could be that, despite what we said, until we had the sort of the thing that the whole thing rides on, which is the data, right? Without good data, you can't really do much with asset management. It's kind of it's an interesting topic, but it's not super useful. So I'll post this in the chat. You guys can take a look at, or I'll post it on the site. You can take a look at it. If it's of any use, or if you want to talk about it further, please give me a holler.
So Yvonne, would you be interested in having a chat next week about maybe looking at that, higher level line to maybe look at what bits and pieces of that might be able to, put a business process model, at least the start of it?
Yeah, and I did start on one, but I didn't really finish it. So, but yeah, I mean, what are you thinking? Just like you and I, or?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Either me or Mike Barnett, whichever,
Okay.
whoever, we can sit down and kind of go through it. We've done a lot of that in the first 2 years of the UAM project. We spent a lot of time with folks just helping to get going. You know, now, I mean, KC Water now has a team and they've taken training, so they're kind of off and running with it. But it takes a little bit of a coordination in the beginning to get it going. Once you get one or two done, it's a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
that's good.
so let's schedule something. So we're a little bit over time, but I very much appreciated everybody's attendance, and Dan